safeguards in the process. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Nikki Kay.
Mr. Speaker, I am very pleased to be speaking on this legislation. I want to start by acknowledging all members of the Local Government Environment Select Committee, but particularly the Chair, Nikki Wagner, who I think has done an outstanding job, often negotiating between members of the opposition and government members, but I just want to acknowledge her here this evening. Overall, I want to start off by saying that I think one of the issues that the Select Committee had to grapple with was a difference in philosophy between certain members. And I would challenge some of the speakers that we have seen regarding this bill to come up with a tangible risk-based system rather than what I think we have heard both throughout the Select Committee process but also in this House, which is about rhetoric. Members on this side of the House do believe that there is an ability through this legislation to not only improve the status quo, and we have heard that there have been 46 wells to be drilled in this area, so we believe we are improving the situation. We are actually putting a decent management regime in. But then secondly, to provide an appropriate balance that enables New Zealand to improve our economic development, but also have an adequate protection and risk management regime in place. And we are confident that we are able to provide that balance through this legislation. And I want to talk through some specifics around that, but I want to make that point at the outset that we always hear the rhetoric from the opposition, but actually when you look at the practical things and some of the things that they propose, it is really just opposing economic development. And we believe that, as I said before, not only are we going to improve the situation because we've already had not any regulation in this area with 46 wells being drilled, but we also think that we can get the appropriate balance from an economic development perspective. That's right. So I just want to cover a few things off. The first thing is, what is unique about New Zealand is actually the fact that the area of ocean is 20 times New Zealand's land area. So part of what is interesting about this legislation coming to the House is that the Parliament for many decades has focused a lot on what is land-based activity. But as someone said to me in the environmental movement when I was first elected, that there is still a need in the oceans area to have better environmental policies. And what this is a reflection of in this bill is the Parliament saying that for an area of ocean that is 20 times New Zealand's land area, we have to do more and we have to have a better risk management regime in place. So when we look at what this bill actually covers, I think we have to cover several areas. The first is we have to look at what the actual activities are. And as I said before, we've heard a number of scaremongering things, I think, from some members within the House. But actually, some of the advice that we have had is twofold. One is, if we look at some of the activities that are going to happen, not all of it is actually about mineral exploration. We're also talking about marine farming, we are talking about energy generation, we're talking about carbon capture and storage, we're talking about seismic surveying and cable laying, so it's not all about mineral exploration. And the second thing that I would say in terms of activities that are covered is that when we went through the Select Committee process and looked at some of the changes that potentially needed to be made, we did put a number of protections in. I just want to cover some of them. So Clause 19 sets out a very general duty to avoid, remedy or mitigate adverse environmental effects. The second thing that I'd say is, from the advice that we had, we do believe that the levels of activity in the EEZ and continental shelf are pretty low, and this is going to bring me on to the reason why we didn't choose to go down an RMA line in terms of the legislation, but they're pretty low, and indications, we believe, suggest that we will not see a large number of operations in the next 10 years. Right. So a big debate that came to the Select Committee was, why don't we just extend the RMA? And what we are confident of is that this is different, this is the marine environment, and that we have provided a scheme, a management regime that not only enables regional councils to still have involvement, they will still, my understanding is, have involvement under the RMA for regional coastal plans and consenting activities in the territorial sea, but when it comes to some activities, a small number, this bill will apply. That is a good thing for New Zealand, because what it means is more jobs through greater economic development. What it means through is reducing risk around some of these activities, because we know the framework isn't in place now. But also, Finally, what it also, I think, says to New Zealand is that we are going to provide greater clarity in terms of investors and existing interests that are there, and we will also ensure that decisions are made in a very timely manner. And that has been a hallmark of National's previous RMA reforms. It's not necessarily about changing what has been in the past under the previous RMA changes, the test from an environmental perspective. It was about ensuring that decisions were made in a timely manner and were cost effective to ensure that we do have greater economic development. So, Mr. Speaker, what members on this side of the House are saying is that we have provided a cost-effective approach that is about reducing risks, but also ensuring that in that area where there is very little management at the moment, that we have an improved situation. And I think that's a very rational approach, and I think that we need to be careful of some of the scaremongering that happens, because there are many other activities like marine farming and energy generation that this will apply to, and I think that's a very rational, balanced environmental policy. I'm very pleased to support this bill to the House. I want to reiterate the hard work of all members on the Select Committee on both sides of the House, in particular the Chair, Nikki Wagner. Thank you.
Good speech. Good speech.
Honourable Ruth Dyson.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to begin my contribution on the exclusive economic zone